military service don't match anything in what bad for me. It was a time when my brother Clyde was went in. That's a whole different climate from when I went in.
Yeah.
And I was in the poverty that I left in Mississippi, even though I was drafted in California. My military experience, as I look deeply back on it, was all good. And I was of the in the military when I believe it was when yes, I went into the service as a part of the first integrated military from California. And the boys that I went in with, I think I might have been 19 or 20 when I went in. And they was drafted from California. We went in from L.A., went to Fort Art for our training, and many of those other people who was with me went to camp right between Fort Art and in L.A., Camp Robbers.
Mm-hmm.
And we went in as the first integrated after Truman integrated the Army, and the military had the power to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a school, and everybody in the military is under somebody else.
Yeah.
And if you would get me to overall look at the military, yes, even right today, the United States head of the military just confirmed a black as the top person.
Right. Yeah.
So I got out of it. So all of and I was not a Christian when I went in.
Mm.
I was grew up in Mississippi as an escape to California as an angry black, at least against all Mississippi people. But when I got to California, a couple of years before I went in, a few years before I went in, that was a great experience for me just as an individual civilian.
Mm-hmm.
I tell the story about starting mechanization and being the first people in. And when it was set up, I ended up becoming, first I was a lead man, then I ended up becoming a union leader within the organization where I was becoming a businessman for the company, but I saw the need for a sense of equality. And it wasn't a big conflict. And even though we led a little work stoppage, we was not punished, neither was I fired. But I left the management to get into the union. My experience and what I'm actually saying, these were opportunities, not with somebody who was a radical,
yeah,
but somebody who benefited from, and my company benefited from. And then I got out of the military, and I've used my GI Bill in California to buy a house.
yeah.
Came back to Mississippi, used it to buy a house. So, and then I just got out of the hospital back in December. I went yesterday 1 year to get my examination, but I was operated on a VA hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So my experience as a Christian, so I came a Christian after I became a soldier, after I got out.
Yeah,
so my experience, I looked back in gratitude. So I don't have now, that's the whole thing, but I don't make the military having nothing to do with my brother being killed.
Uh-huh.
It was an environment as racist in the community.
Yeah.
So I would not put any of that. My hands up is with the military.
Yeah.
My heart beats because I think even in the state we was in coming up, in a racist situation, but segregated, we sung and looked for the day would come when America would live up to his creed. When the civil rights movement come was good. Now we welcome the civil rights movement. Sometimes I talk to white folks in the South and around the United States. They ask me then, when did you join the civil rights movement? Like they got something against it.
Hmm.
I don't have nothing against the civil rights movement. I would be an absolute fool to turn against somebody to deliver me from the kind of slavery. But I'm not also mad with white folk.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think Christianity have helped me to understand what the forgiveness of sin and what brings about genocide when you don't forgive each other. And my biblical faith says that teaches that all sin can be forgiven. Then it use a couple there, but those two is a sin. All sin is against God, but all of that was meant to be against God, blaspheming against the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So my I'm not accommodating anything that the military have done.
Right.
But for me, in my experience, I don't have anything against the military. Now, one of the things I've done now with this operation, the military is so busy, the VA is so busy in everything with phone calls, and I'm 90 years old and can't go through those systems fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then and I've been blessed with a good life in terms of economics. While I got at the VA, I didn't get out of it. I went back when I had this operation, this last cancer operation. I went to a private doctor just for access, not because the VA was so full. And so many of the VA people my age, my group is the fastest dying group.
Yeah.
In the country, because we are dying out.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm 90, so we're gonna be dead, and we're gonna be all gone in 5 or 6 more years. So my life with the military, and I think my success in when I got out of military had to do with when I was in the military, because I dropped out of elementary school, and so my learning and opportunity. And I've always lived over my head. I've always had jobs that I didn't have the background. I have found out that's a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a virtue when you are called upon to do what you cannot do. And if the environment and the leadership is there, you can survive. There's ways to do that.
Yeah.
And I have helped families, rich families, and poor families use that coming to the end of what they know and reaching for what you don't know. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's where success is at. Success is basically not totally satisfied, but then looking for people not just to be better than them, but humbling yourself under them and being able to continue to look for truth. That's a hard task too.
Yeah.
So wisdom is really humility. Wisdom is really humility. So, so what I'm saying is, I was in the troop information and education deal. I didn't. I was shocked when I went in and being taught that I needed to hate a communist I knew nothing about
Mm-hmm.
and go kill him. That sort of prepped me. I didn't get mad with the military, but it's prepped me for coming out. And I think it created an opening that when I did come to faith in Jesus Christ, that the military had contributed to me. Now, I heard all these other stories. I haven't gotten in. I probably would have got involved because of my love for it. I wouldn't have wanted to become corrupt to destroy others. And so I would have, but it never became a mission for me.
Yeah.
Because racism was much more damaging. The racism in this country not only was damaged against black folks, but it damaged white folks.
Yeah.
So there was an evil outside, it's bigger than, in my sight,
Yeah.
bigger than the evil inside. Now, on the other hand, one of my greatest, a Ku Klux Klanman, Thomas Tarrant, who actually bombed Jews and whites home. He's one of my best friends because he came to Christ and he repented so deeply. You could, so I have but now on the other hand, I'm not against people going in and finding whatever evil it is. If it's against a military person, and if it's against the military, let's root it out. You get the idea?
Yeah.
So I'm not just mad anti looking for something to root out. I'm mad looking for people who can find faith and a sense of gratitude and stewardship of God's earth.
Yeah.
So that's my, so I would want to not, I would not make some wild statement and contribute my misery to the military.
Mm-hmm.
That's my honest, but I would not feel good if the military is being used in an evil way. I wouldn't feel good, but I would want to, at this point, engage our people in reconciliation, engage our people to loyalty to our nation. We are at a crucial time that our nation could be so easy to destroy because people like Brian Jane and all these people, they ain't gonna buckle as inferiors, even though they're making all this money. Mm-hmm. They don't decide that they're equals. And a black had to assume that he was not equal and that he had to be super to be equal. Every child should be equal. It shouldn't, the bill don't mean his achievement makes him equal. He ought to be born with that. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all mankind was created equal by the Creator and was designed for certain rights, and chief among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I'm one of those who, I'm not here just a wild praising it, but it for my, but I'm not here wild or condemning it, because a poverty black for me ends up being with 16 honorary doctor's degrees, and all of these books that our family and us and others can benefit from, and that we're just not creating a scholarship fund to help build endowments in schools for children And these are not only poor blacks, but these are for poor whites too. Because in Mississippi, where I live, poor white folks don't have a liberator.
Mm.
The Pentecostal church used to have them, and the Ku Klux Klan exploits them.
Yeah.
My thought is, and I would not say the military was right in all of its existence, but I wouldn't want to condemn our whole military. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that resonates a lot with where I'm coming from. I think I have this. I hear from other veterans who want to really take ownership of their faith, but what they hear from the pulpit is either like the blind patriotism, where it's flag everywhere and everything else, or it's keeping them at a distance because of their military service, assuming that the military always and everywhere does something bad to a person, and until they, you know, confess or repent or something, even if they were like an admin person never deployed, there's this disconnect. So that's precisely what, is motivating me as well, is looking at the good and the bad in the military and providing resources to do that.
I like that. I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying. That's why I wanted to talk to you and understand what you were doing.
Yeah.
And that we go at it in an honest way of integrity, because we build after the military, and I feel good about too. We build a great America.
Yeah.
After World War II. Now, what we did is got deceived. We got deceived by religion. Turning religion over to Trump was evil, and I'm not faulting Trump.
Yeah.
I did an article in the Washington Post about that.
I have to look that up.
That they turned the Christian faith, a group of people, over to Trump. He didn't take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was deception. Now, I'm not in the mood of making a demon out of Trump. He did wrong. And we're going to see it deeper, because he did it out of his own ambition.
Yeah.
It wasn't patriotism he was doing.
Yeah.
He wasn't to make a better America. He was enrich himself.
Yeah.
Anybody can be deceived. Not anybody, but deception is a devil's trick.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of, your book might contribute to that. I would be glad if you would write a book that would contribute to that, and continue to not assume that the military, or whatever errors you have that is designed to help people without making demons out of somebody else. I would want to speak to that, because we're making demons out of each other, and it's bringing about genocide. Black folks are killing black folks. They got their guns on the wrong people, on the cousins. White folks now are turning their guns on themselves and on churches and ballparks, and going in there and killing anybody. That's our fear.
Yeah.
That's my fear. Is what hatred would do to us.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like doing, and that I think contributes to that, is getting into some of the nitty-gritty details. It's like vets always like to pass around their stories, and everybody checks one another. Sometimes people are nervous about impersonating vets. But you mentioned, I'd be interested in hearing some of the specifics of your service if you remember it. You said you went to, or let me check something by you to make sure some of my math is right. Because I read and reread Justice Roll Down to make sure
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes.
So as far as I can tell, you joined up or were drafted somewhere in April of 1951. And I
went in February.
February, okay. Now, did you between February and when you got married, because you said you took a 21-day leave to get married and then went back in and went overseas, came back. Between February and April, was that all training, or did they have you waiting somewhere?
No, I was trained at Fort Art,
Okay.
and it was 15 weeks training.
Oh, okay.
And then we would have a week or so probably in Fort Art, but they send you home.
Yeah. Okay.
You can get a furlough, and we got what we call a 21-day furlough. That's when I got married.
Okay. Fort
And
Art.
then I
What?
went back and went overseas.
Okay. Fort Art
And
may
it
not
was home
exist
for my
anymore.
wife. That was the horrible thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the power of that, but I also wanted to get her before somebody else got her.
Yeah, I heard a lot. People will. Yeah, I had friends that got married on R&R. What state was Fort Art in?
So what?
Do you remember what state it was in? I don't know if it still exists or not.
I'm in California.
California. Okay.
I drafted from Southern California, Pasadena. That's right outside of L.A.
Yeah.
I went then up to Oregon, Fort Art. That's in the San Francisco June area. It's not quite to San Francisco. It probably is 100 miles from San Francisco. But San Francisco was pretty easy to go to. But we really didn't go that far because they had some good smaller town in that area, and they had Fort Art was an excellent location. It was actually on the sea.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about then. And then when you went over to Okinawa, do you remember where you were placed in, what your specialty was, anything that sticks out from?
Yeah, we was at Naha.
Huh?
We went in and stayed the first 5 or so months in Naha, but they was building a major Air Force base, and they almost had it finished. Probably even might have had it in the upper part of Kadena, we call it. And that was a big Air Force base there, and that's where the plane went out every morning and every evening to bomb Korea.
Okay.
And so we had to protect that as a military zone. So on all of my military activities, and I could wear them if I would wear them, I never had. We was considered a combat zone.
Okay.
So I was in a combat zone, but we was there to protect the island itself, and particular the airplanes when they went to bomb, because they would come in shot up and stuff like that. And then we was also there because the MiGs was coming out, and they would sometimes chase to be a chasing.
Okay.
And we had to be there ready to shoot down anything that didn't approaching.
Okay.
So the last part of my ministry there, we was dug into the hills and had our own camps. We built our own camp, not permanent, but tips.
Yeah.
And then we protected the guns. And what we would do is, sometimes we would do it in routine, but sometimes we would do it in reality. Enemies are coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we would go out and see how ready we were. It was a way of keeping us exercised.
Oh yeah, like drills.
Like drill. And then the other part I was in when I was at Naha, that's when they put me in the information and education. And even out there, I was in communication.
Mm-hmm.
Because we built back in those days, we built our own telephone line. Right now, you would have to do that because and so what we was doing many times is keeping up our telephone wires.
Okay. Now, was that training wrapped into your 15 weeks of basic, or did you do that somewhere else?
No, in basic, you get that first infantry training. Everybody get that, and then the other 50, how many weeks it is, 15 weeks. The
Okay.
other then was heavy anti-aircraft training. So I was trained to be an infantry. Everybody's trained there. And then we was not with the heaviest anti-aircraft stuff, but we were trained in that.
Okay.
And so when we got, because they knew now, they knew all the time, we are going to Korea, but where do we go? Do we go out into protection or do we go into the fight?
Okay.
And so we ended up going to replace the, the military people who got stuck there for a year over their time
Oh, interesting. Okay.
in the Korean War. So instead of us sending us to Korea, they sent us then to Okinawa to protect that island. At
Okay.
that point, the United States is not going to get that island back
Yeah. Okay.
because it has been the hardest to take.
Okay. Now you mentioned communications. Was that your official specialty?
I learned, I was a third grade dropout.
Yeah.
So it was a massive time in my life to concentrate. And I have always been in over my head.
Yeah.
I've always been in broken, not up for the job that I get. And I have been over ambition
Mm-hmm.
in my life. And so I'm always in those. But I have come to understand, even as a Christian, that's where you learn the most when you're hungering and thirsting after something.
Mm-hmm.
And so mine was learning how to read. Mine was learning how to do this. When I went to California, I didn't know what a street and a boulevard the difference.
Hmm.
In fact, I learned all of that creatively in the military because we, in communication, we was a part of what you call inhaled artillery. We were trained to be forward observers. We was the people who would go as close to the line or beyond the line. And that we would communicate back to the guns what the environment looked like. And boy, I learned, and you always know what is north, what is south.
Mm-hmm.
You know that, and I learned that. My kid was always, we'd always have fun. It's difficult for me to get lost,
Mm-hmm.
to know what is north, what is south.
Yeah.
And all of us carried a compass in our pocket or somewhere. And then, of course, when we would communicate back to the base, we had to communicate where we at and where they're at is place that can't be destroyed.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't locate people by what house is on the left, what house is on there, because the house could be destroyed, and you could misguide
Yeah.
the artillery that you was calling in. So you had to, and you wasn't a good. You need to call the military in on the enemy, not on yourself.
That stuff is ringing bells.
Yeah, you know that. Yeah,
Do
that's
you?
routine to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when it came time? Did you do just a 1 year draft enlistment or
No, 2 years. It
2
was
years?
2 years, and it was 2 years. So
Okay.
I stayed in 22 months,
Okay.
23 months or something like that. That was supposed to be 24 months.
Okay. And when you were getting ready to come home, what do you remember anything as you were before you got on the plane to leave Okinawa? What kind of things were you looking forward to? Do you remember anything about before you came home?
Oh, I think I'm looking forward to, and all of us, many of the other boys are looking forward to getting married. Some of them was heartbroken because somebody else had got the girl they wanted. So yeah, I was looking forward to coming home and being a husband.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then,
to be in a hub. And Vera May, I've been with her now. I'm 90 and a half. She is 87 and a half. And we've been together for 70 years. Isn't that something?
yeah, yeah, I saw. That's what I was trying to do my math. I found a couple years ago when your daughters put something about your anniversary. That's how I was able to piece together the time frame. That's an admirable goal to shoot for. My wife and I are at 5 right now, so we've got a ways to go.
And now, where you live?
We're in Maryland now. When we last spoke, I was in North Carolina.
Now, you was in the military too.
Yep, for 6 years, 2000,
That's great.
2006. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
I wanted to also ask you really quickly about the transition home. I mentioned World War II vets, black vets who came home and were discriminated against. That there's a lot of scholarship and articles now talking about how that kind of was the impetus for them to get involved. But that's also, it sounds like your experience in 53 or so was very different from their experience.
Yeah,
The military.
yeah, when I came out too, I met some people and I'm ambition, and I get a job as a janitor. I also went to school and met some people who started their own business in pressing. Dry cleaning was becoming very powerful.
Oh, okay.
And it was a great place to start. So I took my BA training in dry cleaning, but then the company that I worked for promoted me. And so I was better off. I thought I was going to start my own dry cleaning business, but I was learning in merchandising, and they took me out of I told the company that, and they asked me what would I like to learn.
Hmm.
And some of the most important thing in California was construction.
Yeah.
And one of the super important things was welding because of the size of the building. And so I went into welding. I mean, I did welding then when I got out, but I did welding with the company that was also expanding and building stores. You get the idea?
Yeah.
So I became a welder, and that was, to me, adequate because I became in the shop. We had a supermarket, a place like that. We had what we call up to the fourth man in terms of who's in charge. You had the two, one manager and one manager assistant, and then you would have a third person and a fourth person. And so I got in that loop within the shop I was in. So that was a sort of a grading in terms of then a livable wage.
Okay.
And our company was a family-owned company that also set aside a percentage of their company for ownership. And we never bought up to the full amount that the company would give in ownership. That created sort of permanent serious company that you want. And so every year when, of course, our company was splitting. It was growing so fast. And which meant that you got double and sometimes almost triple the amount when they split. All of that was learning for me. Then when I came to faith, I went full time. That's one of the unique things. I'm a guy who went into full-time ministry in 1960 and has been in full-time ministry and ever since. And I took some of those things that I learned and became consultants to other groups. That contributed to my getting into local economic development. I saw the business as we needed ownership, some ownership in the black community.
Hmm.
We needed some businesses. And almost all ethnic groups, blacks had it during the more difficult time. We had more economic development than we have now.
Hmm.
Because it was tight segregation.
Yeah.
In the big cities, particularly in the big cities. And that's, so the black community was a commerce community.
Okay. Yeah. I just have one more question. I got to help out with dinner, but I may try and give you a call maybe in another week or so. When you became a Christian, did you reflect back on your military time at all? Did it?
Oh, and not with messing with other women, but I reflected back on it and my desire to abstain from that kind of stuff and to be a faithful husband. And I really myself had to repent. And then even as I got back before I became a Christian, I cheated after I came to faith. Still, I think that's where some of my gratitude come from.
Mm-hmm.
That Bureau May stuck with me until I overcame that desire and understood the Christian faith. That I got a God that is with me. He sees me. That's a hard thing.
Yeah. Did you?
I mean, God have to be redemptive, and then I didn't never get any children during those early days out of wedlock. That's a blessing.
Do you?
God,
when I ask or when I hear from other soldiers and vets, they do talk about like womanizing or pornography or something. Do you ever think about, like you mentioned, sometimes having to be ready to shoot down MiGs or protect Okinawa? Was there any violence that you participated in, and was that anything that you reflected on as a Christian looking back on?
no, I did not. We did not shoot down anything.
Okay.
But we was ready to shoot it down.
Okay.
So I have no tough times there.
Gotcha.
One of the things too, I said one time to a Christian boy, I went far from God, and I would say to him, I didn't believe in God, I didn't know who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he would raise that, and I would go into, I didn't know what an atheist was.
Yeah.
But I would go into my anti-God stuff. And sometimes I think his Christian conscience, I was a little bit despised it because it looked like it was against me, because I knew I was against my wife. I knew that. Not against it, I was just sneaking out. And as I look back on it, that was a good experience for me.
Yeah.
I saw Christian consistent in a very difficult situation.
Yeah. Was this other guy, was he one of the other soldiers or like a civilian?
Yeah, he was a soldier. He was a soldier.
Gotcha.
And he was a Christian. And I'm almost, I think, I'm backing was persecuting him. And I think he was trying to be a light.
Yeah.
Those are things I look back on. And even today, I will ask God to forgive me.
Huh.
Even I said, Lord, forgive me for my ignorance.
Do you remember his name, or do you know his name?
No, I don't remember. I lost my military color book. Bureau May had it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in my moving, I lost my military notebook. I had it was a paper book, but it was bigger than an ordinary book. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we also put pictures in it.
Yeah.
And my children would always look at it. Dang, my children loved it.
Yeah.
But they could see me when I was in the military. I did a little boxing.
Yeah.
And things like that. And I was an athlete. So I played on the baseball team and the softball team and the basketball team. And that was common because I played with some of the major leaguers who were drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played with some of the people that was going to play in the big leagues when they got back. We would try to organize either baseball or softball and basketball, even in the smaller unit.
Yeah.
If baseball came from a bigger population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it was pretty popular when I was in too. Do you remember the name of the unit when you were in Okinawa? The number or the mascot or anything?
I read it all.
Okay.
I read it all. The only thing I can remember is I done lost it now, my seal number.
Huh.
Yeah, I forgot about I lost my seal number. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This has all been really helpful and interesting. I'm sure I'll go over my notes and look at stuff and have other questions. You mind if I call you back again maybe in a couple weeks?
I don't mind it at all.
All right.
I don't mind it at all. Okay, brother.
All right. I really appreciate it, Dr. Perkins.
Bye-bye.
Bye.